you can usually feel it before you can prove it. One month an artist is untouchable, headlining festivals, moving product, dominating headlines. The next, they are a complicated legacy, a canceled tour, a lawyer-polished statement. So what really causes a superstar to fall? An oversensitive audience, or a machine that finally runs out of excuses? It's rarely one thing. It's a chain reaction where public behavior, brand risk, legal pressure, and platform economics collide. This video breaks down 3 major collapses not as gossip, but as case study: what happened, what it cost, and what the music industry learned the hard way. Number 3. R. Kelly. Some careers fade slowly: a weak album, a bad era, a gradual loss of relevance. Others don't fade at all, they stop. R. Kelly represents the starkest version of a modern fall, one driven not by taste or trends, but by the legal system finally catching up. For decades, allegations followed him without stopping the machine. Radio spins continued. Tours sold out. Industry silence held. Fame didn't just create opportunity, it created insulation. What changed was not public opinion alone, but infrastructure. Digital reporting made documentation permanent. Investigative journalism didn't disappear after a news cycle, and institutional patience, prosecutors, juries, courts, eventually ran out. In February 2025, a U.S. federal appeals court upheld his convictions and 30-year prison sentence related to racketeering and sex trafficking charges. That moment mattered because it wasn't a new accusation or a viral surge. It was finality. The system saying, "This is proven," and it stands. This is why his collapse differs from most celebrity downfalls. There was no rebrand window, no pause and return strategy, no narrative reset. Incarceration combined with upheld convictions creates a hard wall. The industry doesn't debate morality at that point, it recalibrates around permanence. Court cases don't compress time the way public relations does. PR aims for closure, apology, statement, new release, reset. Legal proceedings do the opposite. They reopen the same questions year after year. What happened? Who enabled it? And what can be proven? Once those answers are fixed in a court record, legacy stops being a shield. The uncomfortable truth is simple: fame can delay consequences, but it cannot erase them once the law locks in. At that point, the difference between a comeback and a collapse is whether the problem was a branding issue or a crime that became a legal fact. Number 2. Ye. If R. Kelly's fall was the law catching up, Ye's was something else entirely: self-destruction in real time, broadcast globally, with corporate collateral damage. Ye wasn't just a musician for years, he was an ecosystem. Music, fashion, cultural influence, and a rare level of celebrity that could move markets. Attention was his greatest asset, and eventually, his accelerant. The break became undeniable when major companies cut ties after anti-Semitic statements and repeated public behavior. The most consequential rupture was the end of the Yeezy partnership with Adidas, which removed a massive revenue engine and, more importantly, mainstream legitimacy. What followed wasn't just backlash, it was structural fallout. Legal disputes, investor questions, and corporate distancing continued long after the initial controversy. In late 2025, courts rejected claims that Adidas had misled shareholders, reinforcing a core corporate position. Celebrity partnerships are inherently risky, and reputational harm is a known variable. In January 2026, Ye attempted a public reset with a full-page newspaper apology, attributing past behavior to mental health struggles and stating that he had sought treatment. The response was cautious acknowledgement paired with a clear boundary: an apology does not erase history. That moment is important not because it solved anything, but because it revealed what the post-collapse phase looks like for a modern superstar. Public contrition exists alongside a permanent archive. Nothing is deleted. Everything is indexed. At a certain point, the artist becomes the headline more than the work. In the attention economy, controversy doesn't compete with art, it replaces it. When discourse centers on statements, partnerships, and damage control instead of releases, the artist shifts categories. They stop being framed as a creator and start being treated as a risk object. Brand partnerships are not emotional relationships. They are calculations. Global companies tolerate edgy until it threatens distribution, retailers, regulators, or core customers. When that line is crossed, the relationship ends cleanly, publicly, and without nostalgia. Ye's collapse shows how fragile the artist as brand model really is. The same network that builds an empire can turn it radioactive overnight. Fans may remain, attention may persist, but once the largest institutional partners leave, the machinery that converts fame into scale is gone. Number 1. DaBaby. Not every fall is a sudden crash. Some are quieter, slower, more modern. DaBaby didn't lose everything in a single moment. Instead, his career illustrates how controversy can turn into a long-term demand problem. After remarks during a festival performance in 2021, backlash followed quickly. Festival slots disappeared. Partnerships ended. Public criticism surged. The reaction looked explosive on the surface. But the deeper consequence wasn't outrage. It was hesitation. The industry's unspoken signal was simple. This comes with risk. Over time, performance indicators reflected that shift. Later releases charted more weakly than his earlier peaks, not as a one-off dip, but as a downward trend. Charts don't argue. They measure behavior. Importantly, he did not disappear. He continued releasing music, performing, and attempting to reframe his public image. In early 2026, he released Be More Grateful, signaling persistence and a tonal shift rather than retreat. Yet rebuilding momentum requires more than output. It requires trust. Trust moves slowly. Platforms, festivals, and brands don't just watch talent. They watch patterns. Fewer controversies, fewer surprises. Enough time to feel safe reinvesting. Additional choices such as performing in geopolitically sensitive contexts while much of the Western music industry maintained distance further complicated that trust calculus. None of these decisions alone ended his career. Together, they narrowed his lanes. This is the slow leak collapse. The artist remains active, but less central. Still visible, but no longer a default pick for mainstream infrastructure. In the modern music economy, losing scaffolding, playlists, festivals, brand safety can matter more than losing fans. The pattern behind the falls. These three cases look different on the surface. Legally, culturally, and financially, they are not the same story. But underneath, the mechanism is consistent. Fame functions as leverage until it becomes liability. At peak level, it excuses behavior. When the cost of association outweighs the benefit, that same fame makes separation urgent. The industry does not operate on morality, it operates on risk management. Labels, platforms, and brands are designed to protect operations, not reputations. Once an artist threatens stability, the exits begin. And in the modern era, the archive always wins. Court rulings remain. Statements resurface. Old footage returns with new context. Even apologies become permanent entries in the timeline. The real lesson is this: a fall is rarely one moment. It's a system gradually deciding it will no longer cover for you. Once that protection is gone, talent still matters, but it stops being enough. Fame doesn't disappear overnight. It erodes when protection, patience, and trust quietly run out. These stories aren't just about music, they're about how power works when the spotlight turns harsh. If you want more deep dives like this that explain why big careers rise and fall, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.